different ways to approach growth. And it can be in both growth from the standpoint of, so with goBRANDgo, with kind of how we've grown as a company, but also personally, how you can grow as an individual. So there's kind of two ways to grow. There's foundational. Foundational, and then there's focused. So kind of two ways to look at it is kind of pyramid and then tree. So what would you say potentially could be the advantages of foundational growth versus focused growth? That's not a rhetorical question.
Sturdier.
Okay, sturdier. What else?
It's a broad scope.
Okay, broad scope. What about focus? What would be some advantages potentially of focused growth?
Quicker.
It's quicker. What else?
You get highly specialized.
So you're highly specialized, right? So those are two different approaches. So for us, which do you think we've probably taken more of?
Well, we take more foundational and then feed those people into focus.
Right. So we probably take more of a foundational approach. From the standpoint of we layer blocks and blocks on top of each other from the standpoint of when we learn new things. So, for example, 2003 to 2008 was apparel and promotional products and marketing strategy and things like that. Then we layer websites and design and consulting and all of these things. But where the real value comes, we mentioned in Whiteboard Wisdoms a couple weeks ago about intersectional innovation. You guys remember that? The Medici effect? So what ends up happening is when you don't have a pyramid that's on a major slant and you kind of make it a little straighter, what ends up happening is so if you have, from a learning standpoint, you have your foundational learning, and then when you layer one block that combines kind of two thoughts, now you create kind of a mini pyramid. And what ends up happening is you keep layering more and more stuff on top of each other. And all the different associations that you make along the way start building on top of each other. So even though this new highly specialized thing that you learned seemingly looks irrelevant to this foundational block, it's really still connected. So what you want to continue to try to do when you're learning is expand your base and then also build on top of things. So a lot of times it's not sequential and it's not organizational, but you start kind of piling on top, which allows you to understand new concepts and allows you to understand new things and look at things in a totally different perspective. Because what ends up happening is the more things you learn this way, the better you're going to understand them at a greater depth. So I guess if this was inverted, your depth of knowledge is really going to expand. The more things you can know, the deeper you can understand it, because you can then have more of those intersectional ideas that you can really have those cross sections. So the other thing about this is it's not really two-dimensional. There is 3 dimensions to it. So you can learn both foundationally new things, but also foundationally kind of a deeper knowledge just about that one specific thing. So it kind of goes in 3 dimensions and goes all the way up. So compare that to focus growth. When you've got, essentially here, instead of blocks going this way, you've got blocks going up, and then you've got your pretty little tree. So what ends up happening here is, you've got the roots going down, and you can only go as high as the roots go up. Or go down as high as you can go up. So the advantage, like you guys talked about, is when you're highly specialized, you can go up faster. So in a growth standpoint, you can look at this from companies that are bootstrapped. We talked about startups that are bootstrapped, so they learn along the way, they self-fund, and they keep growing on their own accord. So you learn a lot of things along the way that helps you build a stronger foundation. The problem is sometimes you run out of time before it can work. So that's why startups a lot of times get funding, so they get outside resources that help them grow faster. What ends up happening, though, is a lot of times when you have focus growth based on outside resources, so if a tree has to have rain to grow, what happens if there's a drought?
It does.
Big trouble. So there's opportunity for a bigger splash because you can grow up and out much faster, but that's also a higher risk. So that's also one of the kind of the differences between the two, is this takes a lot longer. A pyramid takes a long time to build. It's slow and steady. But it gives you a really strong foundation. A strong windstorm isn't going to knock pyramids over. They've been around for 4,000 years. Whereas a tree, one good storm or a drought can take it down. So the other kind of cool piece in this, do anybody know what a fractal is? F-R-A-C-T-A-L? Brian, what's a fractal?
It's a pattern that repeats infinitely.
Right. So a fractal is a self-repeating system or process. So it's when you take a small cross-section of any piece of something, and it's the same thing on a smaller basis. So if you take and you would cut a snowflake into 1,000 pieces, you'd have 1,000 pieces that would look exactly the same as a big snowflake. And that's really what this is as well. We mentioned here you've got a mini pyramid. You've got a mini pyramid here. You've got another one here. You've got one here. So you've got lots of different types of learning going on that all build on top of each other. And what in nature and actually in engineering, the strongest shape is a triangle, right? That's what you're building here is triangle on top of triangle on top of triangle on top of triangle, which really gives you that strong base that you can continue to build on and learn from. So what it comes down to is like I mentioned earlier, is you've got to be continually pushing yourself to learn new things, because that allows you to expand your base, which allows you to then go higher. If you start trying to pile on top of and try to go too focused too quickly, it makes you go higher, but it also makes it less steady. The other important part about this is, and we've talked about failing forward, right? So the other component that when you put this into a growth model, into a learning model, is when you fail forward in this model. So say we don't know where the block is going, but all of a sudden it lands there, and then we try to put one in here. What's going to happen? This block falls down, right? So, but this is just one block, so it's not that big of a deal. We pick the block up off the ground, and we go, oh, it actually needs to go here. And then we can start building underneath it or up and around it. As opposed to, in this model, if you misplace one block, so say you put the block here, and then you try to stack the next one here, down goes tree. So what this allows you to do is when you have that strong foundation and you add one nugget at a time, it allows you to take more chances, because it's not going to bring the whole thing down if you do something wrong. And it allows you to learn from the lesson, pick up the block, understand, learn the lesson of what happened, what went wrong, and then reapply the lesson and reapply the block in a place that would allow it to continue to grow. What's another place that you guys have seen this? That question is coming every week, so.
Besides Egypt?
No trees.
I see our designers learning code.
Yeah.
So it's not just, they're not focusing just on their own thing.
Right, so if this is development and this is design, what they've done is built this block, which has allowed them to build all of these on top of it. So that's the intersection.
What Brian's doing for the content department is like kind of laid out all the blocks of efficiencies, and then teaching them or working with Robin and Maggie on it, and then kind of adding, slowly adding, and not trying to like do everything at once.
So what Brian is doing, he's saying, here are the building blocks of how to do content, which allows them to understand kind of and really understand the purpose of things, which of those you have a greater understanding of the whole, and build upwards. It takes a lot more time up front, as opposed to what he could be doing is just saying, write a blog post, write a social media post, just do it. And that would be more, they would be more productive right away. But then if something wasn't in specific, wasn't a plug and play, repeat completely exactly the same as they got the last time, they wouldn't know where to go, so they might put it off to the side, and then the whole thing comes tumbling down.
Well, and because we're the size we are, because we're so small, and because we move fast, a lot of our blocks are built out of towers and crumbs of towers that fell over, but they're still getting built, because if you step back from that content department pyramid there, there's the block underneath it that's built of learning how to do systems and learning how to implement it all, so that those empty 6 blocks there can then be applied elsewhere to make a stronger pyramid later.
Yeah. So they are very much the fractal of a piece of a piece of a piece. Any other places? Yeah, because one of the other kind of components of this, from a messaging and positioning standpoint, is when you understand kind of what your tactics are, then it allows you to kind of piece them together. So if we know how to do development and design and content and everything else, websites, everything that we do, and then we know how to link them together, then that's how to do smart tactics. So that allows us to kind of do integrated targeted marketing, is when we can. So up here you're looking at something that's built on, even if it's just strictly content here, it's still built on the same foundation that has the development and design and photography and all the other things. When it gets up even to a higher level, this is when we start getting into being able to be that full service agency. Because now we can strategically build all of these things together that we learned. And then once we start kind of getting to a higher level, and this is kind of where we can empowergize people. We can be the champion for everyday entrepreneurs. So there's a much greater depth to it, because we can understand the fundamentals and we can keep going higher and